Investors in mining companies need to be sure to read the Qualified Persons Report. This is an official document which is prepared by somebody who doesn't just know the company intimately well, but knows the industry, and in particular, the mineral that's being mined. And here is an example of why reading the Qualified Persons Report is so important. Let's review the annual report for 2014 of CNMC Goldmine Holdings, which has a tenement in northern Malaysia called the Sokor Block. It's in the middle of Kelantan State, fairly close to the Thai border. And what you'll know from reading the annual report is that they have 3 mines as part of the Sokor Block. Now, careful though, because 2 of them are actually not yet operational. There's Manson's Lode and New Discovery. All the gold that they're producing currently comes from Rixon. Now, that name is going to be important, so remember as we go through this brief review of the annual report and the Qualified Persons Report. What they then said in the annual report is that they produced 26,122 ounces of gold, leading to revenue doubling compared to last year to $33 million. All at a time that the price of gold was falling. It's gone from more than $1,650 an ounce to just over $1,270 in terms of realized price. And so under those circumstances, they did well to increase their revenue and indeed their profitability, which was also up a multiple. But the way that they managed to do that is by cutting costs. The operating costs have fallen from more than $1,000 an ounce to just $725. And in the fourth quarter, they even achieved an operating price of just $610 an ounce. So big improvements in terms of cost, leading to an increase in profit. That, together with a tax credit. And now, because they have a 5-year tax holiday in that part of Malaysia, instead of having to pay tax like last year, this time they actually had a tax credit. If we look aside all of those accounting issues and just focus on cash flow, that was up by more than 3 times, almost 4 times, and their cash balance is now at $12 million. But now let's get on to the importance of reading the Qualified Persons Report, which makes up about half of the CNMC Goldmine annual report for 2014. Here we have, in the 4th paragraph of the operations review, this particular line. Now this is going to be important, so pay attention. What they've said is that they've undertaken additional drilling at Rixon, their operating gold mine, and therefore extended the resource that they have there to the south and to the northeast, and increased the indicated mineral resources tonnage by 51%, with an overall 43% increase in contained gold. Sounds glamorous. A 51% increase in tonnage, 43% increase in contained gold. Wow, that sounds terrific. But let's see where those numbers actually came from. First of all, they talked about indicated mineral resources. Now, what is an indicated mineral resource? Well, let me tell you, it's on the scale here, going from the least likely that there is something valuable in the ground to the most likely. All mines want to be at this end of the scale, where they have proven reserves, and if not proven reserves, at least probable reserves. Indicated mineral resource is actually only at the 2nd step. So what's important to note here is that this 43% increase in contained gold is actually not going to come out of the ground in the next year. In fact, it's not yet moved up that ranking to actually be probable or even a proven reserve. So therefore, that's obviously important to note in case you're anticipating a big increase in production. So let's take a look at the Qualified Persons Report. Maybe we'll find the number there. This is by Optiro, a Perth-based company. And as a Qualified Persons Report, you'll find that all the geologists and suitably qualified personnel have put their signatures on this very official-looking report. And at page 130, as I'm looking for that 43% number, I came across this table here. And what's curious about it is that it's full of zeros. What we've seen here is that the resources, the indicated resources, sure are up a very substantial percentage, but in terms of measured resources and proved reserves, there's actually no change at all. In fact, far from saying that there's no improvement, they're saying they don't have any. So yes, they do still have some probable reserves, that was up by 5%, but they don't have any proven reserves and no measured resources. How can that be? Well, the commentary from Optiro says that with the information available to them, a detailed reconciliation of actual mined against depleted model could not be completed. With the information available, did they not have the information available? And so when we then turn to this page here, we see that they have 11 recommendations, one of which is the most basic of recommendations, which says that ongoing recording of monthly operational production figures should occur. Aren't they doing that already? Well, apparently not. Apparently the paperwork at CNMC leaves so much to be desired that they've put up these 11 recommendations. Here's another one. Significant differences between the topographical surface data and the drill hole collars surveys need to be resolved. Now, I couldn't tell you what those differences are or what this means in particular. That's up to you to ask at the annual general meeting. But it does indicate that there are some discrepancies that the qualified person is concerned about. Goes on to say that quality assurance and quality control, QA and QC, should be improved. What's wrong with it now? QA and QC issues must be resolved with a laboratory that helps them to analyze their samples. Pit survey pickups should be completed on a regular basis. You mean they're not now? A detailed life of mine schedule should be updated with the depleted Rickson ore reserve and accounting for mining activities that have occurred. So that life of mine survey has not been updated. So again, you can see that the qualified person actually points out that far from being able to show a significant increase, they're saying we can't show anything at all because we just don't have the information that we need in order to substantiate these points. These operational processes, the ones that they're making recommendations about, are considered to be essentials for a single source mining and processing operation. In other words, this has got to be put into place. But with the potential for multiple ore sources to be mined concurrently at SOCOR, the requirement for accurate and rigorous reporting processes is multiplied to ensure that operational performance is recorded on an appropriate basis. In other words, they've got problems now with just one mine. When they start mining at Manson's Lode and New Discovery, those processes really need to be in place so that everybody has a fair idea of what's going on. That life of mine chart, by the way, is available to you on page 138 of the annual report. And you can see here that there is a certain fairly even number of ounces that should be produced over the coming years. They're looking at 37,000 ounces. Now, if we took that purely at face value and said we're going to go from 26,122 ounces in 2014 to 37,000 ounces in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, then that suggests a fairly substantial increase. Plus, when we look at the other mines at SOCOR, for example, we've got, remember, the New Discovery and the Manson's Lode. The amounts of ore, or rather the amounts of gold that could be mined from there, according to this life of mine plan, are actually relatively small. But all of these numbers are irrelevant for as long as they're not updated as Optiro requests. So turn to page 140, where you'll then see this quote. And this is again coming back to that 51% increase in the tonnage. Remember, we talked about this at the beginning, that at Rickson they did drilling to the south, to the northeast, 51% increase in tonnage. Do you remember the percentage for gold in the ground? 43%, right? Well, what they actually said, though, in the qualified person's report, is that sparse drilling to the south of Rickson indicates potential for further extensions of the mineralization. So in actual fact, there hasn't actually been a lot of drilling to the south. It's been sparse, they say. Lots of potential, but it just hasn't happened yet. And part of the problem is, they say, that there is considerable potential remaining in the SOCOR block, if only, as this quote says, if only they actually did more drilling. It'll in fact not just require more drilling, but a higher rate of drilling than CNMC has completed in the past. So they need to do more drilling faster in order to realize the potential of this block. Once again, a question you can pose at the AGM, how are they ramping up their drilling process? Going finally back to the qualified person's report, apparently CNMC has been working in order to improve the processes with all of the things that I've mentioned so far, the drilling, the paperwork, and so on. Good improvement in 2014. But the implementation of these processes would eliminate unaccounted for material movements and significantly streamline end-of-period reporting requirements. That suggests that some bits and pieces are still unaccounted for and that there was pretty much a bit of a rush to get all of this together because they simply didn't have the paperwork kept during the year. Optiro recommend that CNMC continues to improve the rigour that has been applied to the recording and reconciliation of operating activities during 2014. Another question for the AGM. So, how much did the senior management get paid for the 2014 year? We see it on this table over here, where the Executive Chairman, Professor Lin Xiang-Xiong, received between $1 and $1.25 million. Base salary of that was about 1/3. His son, the Chief Executive, Lim Kuo-young, received about $500,000 to $750,000, half of that in salary. And you can see the other directors received below $250,000. Some of the key executives, they are here on this table over here, all received below $250,000 per annum. For the accounting buffs among you, let me wrap with a couple of quick points looking at the balance sheet. For starters, these are the assets, and most noteworthy is that particular increase in cash. You can see that's gone from less than $3 million to more than $12 million. And here are the liabilities. Also interesting because you can see that the derivative financial instrument is now out of the picture altogether. Tax liabilities have also shrunk because, as I said, they no longer have to pay tax. They had a tax credit that boosted the profit in the current year. The annual general meeting is on Tuesday, the 28th of April, 3 p.m. in Toa. Here are the details. Go along to the annual general meeting of CNMC Goldmine Holdings and make your comments and ask your questions.